When my daughter claimed I couldn't make decisions anymore, I kept quiet. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I just sat there on that cold leather chair in the corner of the attorney's office, nodding slowly, letting them speak like I wasn't even in the room. Jessica had her legs crossed, back straight, tone polite, but rehearsed. Rick sat beside her, chin lifted, arms folded, like he was the one holding everything together. The attorney, a young man named Darren something, looked at me the way people look at the elderly when they think we're confused. A polite smile, exaggerated pauses, sentences stripped down like I couldn't follow basic reasoning. "This is just a precaution, Mrs. Henderson," he said, tapping the stack of papers, gently with a manicured hand. "A power of attorney is very common in situations like this. It doesn't mean you're giving up control. It just allows your daughter to assist with financial decisions. Hold on a moment before we move forward. Let us know where in the world you're watching from. And if you're loving these stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. Tomorrow's episode is going to be absolutely mind-blowing. I didn't ask for assistance. I interrupted, my voice calm, almost too calm. Jessica jumped in quickly, her tone light but firm. "Mom, we just want to make things easier. Streamline everything. You've been saying how complicated the mortgage stuff is getting." That was true. I had said that once, over dinner, 6 months ago, when I had trouble logging into the bank's new website. But I figured it out. I always do. I'm not the one who struggles with responsibility in this family. I looked at the papers in front of me. Legal terms, vague language, but I wasn't as clueless as they assumed. I didn't sign anything. I just nodded, said I'd think about it, and we left the office with Jessica clutching her designer handbag a little too tightly, and Rick whispering something to her before unlocking the car. They didn't invite me to lunch afterward. That night, I sat at the kitchen table alone, going through my records. The mortgage payments were up to date. They always had been. On the paper, the house was mine, entirely in my name. I'd bought it 6 years ago, after Jessica and Rick lost theirs during the downturn. She had called me crying, saying they didn't have anywhere to go, asking if I could co-sign a lease while they got back on their feet. I didn't co-sign. I bought the house. Cash down, fixed rate, 30-year mortgage in my name only. They moved in 3 weeks later with their 2 kids, promising it would just be temporary. 6 years later, I was still living in the guest room while they treated me like a burden. At first, it wasn't so bad. Jessica would make dinner a few nights a week, and Rick actually mowed the lawn without being asked. But things changed fast. Jessica went back to work part-time. Rick didn't. He said freelance IT was unpredictable. And slowly, they started treating the house like it belonged to them. I became a background object in my own home. When the baby, their third, came along, I was moved to the smaller bedroom so the nursery could be next to theirs. No one asked. They just told me. I should have said something then. I should have said something 100 times. But I didn't. Because I thought I was helping. Because I believed in family. Because I wanted to be needed. I didn't tell anyone about that meeting with the lawyer. Not my sister, not my friend Marcy, not even the pastor's wife who calls every other Thursday to check in. I kept it inside, letting it sit there like a stone in my chest. A week later, I overheard Jessica on the phone in the living room. I had walked in quietly, not meaning to eavesdrop, but I froze in place when I heard my name. "She's slipping, She can't even remember which day the garbage goes out. Rick says we really need to get things locked down before something happens to her. Or worse, before she gets manipulated by someone else. I mean, it's not like she understands how serious financial stuff works anymore." I stood in the hallway, my hand still on the doorframe, heart pounding, slipping. That's what she called it. Slipping. The woman who held 2 jobs while raising her alone. The woman who taught her how to drive, how to write a check, how to be responsible. The woman who still paid the mortgage every single month. I labeled them clearly, set them by the door. They didn't ask where I was going. I left early the morning of the auction. Before the mailman, before the neighbors started their routines, before anyone could try to stop me or guilt me into staying. Took one last look at the kitchen that used to smell like my cinnamon coffee cake, now sterile and silent. I didn't linger. I didn't need to. When I arrived at the motel, I dropped my bags, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. For a long time, I didn't move. I just sat there, breathing. For the first time in years, there was no noise. No footsteps outside my door, no requests for money, no guilt trips, no manipulations, just me. The auction happened that afternoon. I didn't attend. I didn't check the listing or follow the updates. I didn't need to see who bought it. The house was never the point. Later that week, I stopped by Mr. Kessler's office to finalize the transfer of my trust assets and to give him my new address. He asked if I was okay. I said yes. He believed me. The following Tuesday, I received a message from Jessica. Not a call. A text. We've been given 30 days to vacate. The buyer wants to renovate. Rick's looking for a place. I'm staying with a friend for now. I assume you won't respond. Just wanted to say I hope you're safe. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. A week after that, I got a letter from the bank confirming that the property had officially changed hands. I wasn't liable for anything further. No debt, no responsibility, no ties. I placed the letter in a folder marked closed. And that was that. At the motel, I developed a routine. Morning walks, grocery trips, reading by the window in the afternoons. For the first time in years, my day belonged entirely to me. There was no need to coordinate dinner around Rick's calls, no need to tiptoe around Jessica's moods, no fights over fridge space, no explanations, no being dismissed. One morning, I woke up and made a fresh pot of coffee. I poured a cup, sat in the chair by the window, and stared out into the parking lot as the sun came up. It wasn't a beautiful view, but it was peaceful. I hadn't realized how long it had been since I'd had peace. That night, I slept through. The whole night for the first time in months. No anxiety, no tension, no heavy conversations waiting in the hallway. Just sleep. Full, uninterrupted sleep. They thought I needed the house. They were wrong. I needed freedom. And now I had it. I didn't lose anything they did. They were preparing for the house to be taken. But not once did they offer a real apology. Not once did Jessica say, "I'm sorry for taking you for granted." Not once did Rick admit they had leaned too hard, too long. They treated it like an unfortunate situation, not the result of a choice I had every right to make. And I realized something. They didn't fear losing me. They feared losing the support I provided. The third letter from the bank came a week later. The language was more direct, more urgent. Rick walked into my room that night holding it in his hand. "If this goes any further," he said, "there's no way to fix it." "I know. You're really going to let it happen?" "No," I said. "I'm going to make it happen." He left without another word. They called my sister that night. She didn't call me, but I knew what they were. Trying to build pressure. Make it seem like I was being cruel, unreasonable, selfish. But none of them had been there the night I sat in the laundry room with a frozen meal, because no one thought to call me to the dinner table. None of them saw the moment my name was erased from the kitchen shelf. None of them listened when I said, over and over, "I don't feel like this is my home anymore." And now, the house they believed would always be there, was slipping away. But it wasn't just the walls or the roof. It was the illusion that I would always carry them. And once that illusion broke, they had nothing left to lean on. The foreclosure date was set for the end of the month. They had the exact notice pinned to the corkboard in the hallway. A copy Rick had printed and highlighted like he could somehow negotiate the facts by drawing attention to them in yellow. The bank had given them final notice. 30 days. No extensions, no appeals. The house was going to auction. I still remember the morning the letter arrived. Jessica was already up, pacing by the front window, refreshing her email on her phone. Rick had a pile of bank statements in front of him, scratching numbers onto a legal pad that looked more like panic than planning. When Jessica opened the envelope and saw the official letterhead, she didn't speak. She just handed it to Rick, who read it in silence, then slid it across the table toward me without a word. I didn't touch it. I already knew what it said. Rick stood up suddenly, pushing his chair back hard enough that it screeched on the tile. So that's it then? It's over. I looked at him. It's been over for a while. Jessica sat down slowly. What happens now? The bank will take the house, I said calmly. They'll put it up for public sale. If someone buys it, we'll all be given a final notice to vacate. Rick threw his hands up. So we're homeless? After everything? You had time to plan, I reminded him. You knew what was happening. You just didn't want to believe it. Jessica wiped her face with her sleeve. We didn't think. You'd really go through with it. I did, I said, because no one listened when I said I couldn't do it anymore. Later that day, I quietly booked a motel room for the end of the month, one of those extended stay places near the grocery store plaza. It wasn't fancy, but it had a small kitchen, a clean bed, and a door that locked. I didn't tell them. Not yet. I needed space to prepare without their interference. Over the next 2 weeks, the atmosphere in the house shifted completely. Jessica cried more often, but quietly now. Rick barely spoke to me. The children picked up on the tension and started acting out. Tantrums, arguments over nothing, bedtime resistance. The house felt heavier than I ever remembered. And through it all, no apology came. Jessica tried once. A half apology. She came into my room late one night, her eyes red, hair pulled back, hoodie zipped to her chin. She started. I didn't think things would go this far. I didn't mean to make you feel like you weren't part of this house. You didn't make me feel anything, I said. You treated me like I didn't matter. That's not a feeling. That's a fact. She nodded, wiped her face again, and left. I didn't feel sorry for her. I didn't feel angry anymore either. What I felt was done. 2 days before the auction, I packed my belongings. It didn't take long. I had never truly spread out in that house, never really let myself build a life in those rooms. Most of what I owned still fit into 5 boxes and 1 suitcase. By the afternoon, Rick had taken over. He stood in the kitchen with a manila folder, receipts, and printouts spread across the counter. He was sweating, pacing like someone who had just realized the ground under his feet wasn't solid. We need to fix this, he said, now. Jessica sat at the table, arms folded, staring at me. Mom, we can't just sit and let this happen. The bank said they've sent 2 notices already. They did, I said. I have both. Jessica's voice cracked. Why didn't you say anything? I assumed you'd figure it out. You 2 usually open my mail without asking. Rick didn't appreciate that. Okay, enough with the attitude. We get it, you're mad. But this is bigger than your feelings, Carol. This is our home. No, I corrected. It's my house. You've been living in it, not paying for it. Not maintaining it, living in it. Jessica rubbed her forehead. Can we stop doing this? Please? This blame game, it doesn't help. I'm not blaming anyone, I said. I'm stating the facts. So what do you want? Rick asked, his tone suddenly hard. Do you want us to grovel? To beg you to start paying again? I want nothing, I said. That's the difference. You want things from me. I want peace. Jessica's eyes welled up. We have children, Mom. Yes, you do. And I helped raise them. I covered expenses when you 2 couldn't. I gave up my room, my space, my comfort. I never asked for anything back. Then why are you doing this? She whispered. I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. I just looked at them, both standing there, flustered, confused, angry, and for the first time in years, powerless. Rick stepped forward. You want respect, Carol? Fine. We respect you. You've done a lot. Now please, call the bank and reinstate the payments. I'll figure out a way to take them over in a few months. Do it now, I said. What? You want me to pay now so you can maybe handle it later. But where was this urgency last year, or the year before that? I wasn't working. Full time. But you were driving a car I co-signed for. You went on vacation. Twice. Jessica cut in, her voice shaking. We didn't know you were so resentful. It's not resentment, I said calmly. It's realization. Rick laughed bitterly. Unbelievable. The next day, they called a family meeting. Not with me, with Jessica's aunt and cousin, who showed up around lunchtime. Apparently, word had gotten out. Jessica must have told them everything. Her aunt, Denise, sat on the couch like a mediator, hands clasped, trying to find a solution. Carol, she said, I understand you're upset, but surely there's a way to resolve this that doesn't end with the kids losing their home. I'm not upset, I said. I've made a decision. Foreclosure isn't good for anyone, Denise replied, in that overly calm tone people use when they think they're smarter than you. Not you, not them. It affects everyone's stability. I've lived without stability for 6 years, I said. I got used to it. Jessica started crying again. Loud this time. Her cousin Emily shifted uncomfortably, clearly regretting showing up. Can't you just give them a few more months? Denise asked. You've come this far. No, I said. I'm not interested in temporary patches anymore. Rick got up and left the room. Jessica followed him, still sobbing. Denise sat there stunned. I didn't expect you to be this firm, I offered. She hesitated. Cold, I nodded. That's okay. You're not the one who watched your daughter erase you one piece at a time. Later that night, I found Rick in the kitchen with his laptop open, typing something furiously. He didn't notice me until I walked behind him. What are you doing? Looking for places, he said. I found a 2-bedroom near Maple and 6th. It's small, but it's something. Are you including me in these plans? He turned around. What? I mean, are you planning to take me along? No, he said, caught off guard. I assumed you'd stay here until… Well, he trailed off. Until what? I pressed. He didn't answer. I nodded, turned, and walked away. That was the final shift. After that, I became invisible again. Not the passive kind. The intentional kind. They stopped speaking directly to me. The kids were quieter. No one asked if I needed anything. I started preparing my own meals entirely. I kept a grocery list for myself. I washed my own laundry separately, grabbed his plate, and walked to the sink. There's still salad. That night, I microwaved a frozen meal and ate alone in the laundry room. I didn't ask for company. I didn't try to force my presence at the table. I just sat there, staring at the hum of the washing machine, chewing slowly while a dog barked outside in the distance. It was a small humiliation, but it didn't feel small. 3 days later, I walked into the kitchen to grab a bowl, only to find the cabinet locked. A cheap baby-proof latch had been installed across the handles. What is this? I asked Jessica later that afternoon. She didn't hesitate. We're trying to keep the boys from getting into everything. You know how they are. They've never opened that cabinet. Well, now they won't. I noticed the same latch on the hallway closet where I kept my cleaning supplies, and one on the bathroom cabinet in the guest room. It wasn't about safety. It was about control. I started keeping things in my bedroom. A plastic bin under my bed with instant oatmeal, a thermos, and a small box of crackers. My kettle on top of the dresser. My tea in a locked drawer. Like a tenant. Or a squatter. One morning, I came downstairs and saw Rick at the front door, talking to someone from a roofing company. I didn't ask what was going on, but I overheard enough. He was getting quotes. Yeah, we're thinking of adding a covered porch out back, I heard him say. Maybe do something with the fence. Needs replacing. That night, I asked him directly, You're making changes to the house? Rick leaned against the doorway, arms folded. We're looking into it. Doesn't mean anything's final. But it's not your house. He didn't answer. That weekend, the first foreclosure notice arrived in a large envelope. Jessica opened it again. She never asked if she could, just tore the seal, sat down on the couch, and read it like it was her mail. She came into my room, furious. You're going to ruin our credit. Whose credit? Ours. Mine. Rick's. The kids will have to move. We won't qualify for another mortgage. Do you understand what you're doing? Yes, I said plainly. For the first time in years, I understand exactly what I'm doing. They couldn't believe it. They never thought I'd follow through. Rick told me I was being cold. Jessica accused me of punishing them. But the truth is, I wasn't doing any of this to hurt them. I was doing it to protect myself, to reclaim the space they had quietly stolen from under me. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't slamming doors. I wasn't throwing anyone out. I was stepping out of the role they'd written for me, the one where I funded everything, tolerated everything, and kept quiet about it. The bank sent another notice the next week. The foreclosure process had officially begun. They'd have a few more months before any final action, but the clock was ticking. Rick started calling around to friends, asking about short-term rentals. Jessica cried quietly in the hallway one night after putting the baby to bed. I heard her. I didn't go to her room. I didn't say anything, because 6 years ago, when she begged for help, I said yes. And now, when I asked for respect, she answered with silence. They had a chance to treat me like a person. They chose convenience. Now, the price had arrived, and I wasn't the one paying it. It was exactly 37 days after I canceled the mortgage payments when the first real consequence hit them. A phone call came just after 9 in the morning. Jessica had been sipping her coffee, scrolling her phone, barely acknowledging me at the table. Rick was still upstairs, probably asleep. When the phone rang, she glanced at the screen and frowned. "It's the bank," she said, her voice sharp, more to herself than to me. She answered, walked out to the porch, and I heard her voice get louder through the screen door. "No, there must be a mistake. That's impossible." She paused. "No, I'm not the owner on file. Yes, I know whose name is on the mortgage. I'm her daughter." Another pause. Then her tone shifted. Lower, a little shaken. "What do you mean, intent to proceed with foreclosure? This is a family property." She was quiet for several seconds, just nodding, until she finally ended the call and came back inside. She didn't look at me. She walked straight past, slammed the pantry door harder than necessary, and then disappeared upstairs. I didn't ask what the bank said. I already knew. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. "So what now?" "Now we wait," I said. "Let's see who steps up." For days, the atmosphere in the house shifted. Jessica walked around tight-lipped. Rick stayed in his office, with the door shut. They whispered when I passed. Doors clicked shut behind me. Nobody spoke at dinner. And then the envelope came that they couldn't ignore. A formal default notice with a bold red warning on the front. Intent to foreclose. If unresolved, it was addressed to me, of course, but Jessica found it in the mail and opened it without asking. She stormed into my room, shaking the letter in her hand. "You need to fix this, Mom. You need to call them and make a payment today." "I don't need to do anything," I said. Calmly, "You're going to lose the house." "No, Jessica. You're going to lose the house. I'm walking away from a situation that's become disrespectful, unbalanced, and frankly ungrateful. I'm not losing anything." She stared at me, as if I had slapped her. Rick appeared in the hallway. "So that's it? You're just going to destroy everything we've built?" I stood up. "You didn't build this. You lived off it." They both fell silent. I walked past them and into the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of water, took my time. I heard their footsteps slowly retreat to their room. They thought I wouldn't do it. They thought I was bluffing. But they were wrong. And now the countdown had started. It wasn't one big moment. It wasn't screaming, or slammed doors, or some kind of dramatic scene. It was quiet. Slow. The kind of shift you only notice when you realize how far things have drifted. And by the time I saw it clearly, I had already been pushed out of the center of my own home. The first sign came one morning when I walked into the kitchen to find the dining table completely taken over. Jessica had all her work things spread out. Laptop open, spreadsheets printed, folders in stacks. Rick was on a video call in the living room, his voice loud and sharp as usual. "Morning," I said, reaching for the cabinet. Jessica didn't look up. "Can you give me a few minutes? I'm in the middle of something." I stood there, blinking. "I'm just trying to make some toast." She sighed and shifted her chair an inch. "Just be quick. I need to concentrate." So I made my toast quietly, without turning on the light, and ate it standing up by the sink. The next week, she started using the pantry space I had always kept for myself. A shelf that had held my cereal, my tea, and a few snacks was suddenly packed with juice boxes and crackers. No one said anything. No one asked. When I brought it up later that day, Jessica shrugged. "We're tight on space, Mom. We're a family of 5. There's only so much room." "You could have asked. I didn't think you'd mind. You hardly eat those things anymore." Another day, I came back from the market with a few things of my own. A small rotisserie chicken, some yogurt, a pint of soup I liked. When I opened the fridge, it was all shoved to the side. My name, which I had clearly written on the lid, was crossed out with a Sharpie, replaced with a note that said, "Dinner, do not touch." I called Jessica into the kitchen. "Why did you do that?" She didn't even pretend not to know. "Rick said he was saving it for the kids' lunch tomorrow." "It was mine. I bought it with my money." She looked annoyed. "Mom, you're not even working. Everything you have is tied to this house. And since we're about to lose it—" "We're not about to lose anything," I said firmly. "I chose to stop paying. That's not the same thing." Her voice rose. "It's not just your house, Mom. We live here too. We've built a life. Here. Our children were raised in this home. And I paid for it," I said. "Every month. Alone. With no help from you or Rick." She glared at me, arms crossed. "You're acting like this is all some big betrayal." "It is." She didn't respond. The next day, I wasn't invited to dinner. It wasn't said directly, of course. They just started eating early. I came downstairs at 6:20, and the table was already full of dirty plates, the kids halfway through dessert. No one looked up. I asked, "Wasn't dinner at 6:30? Jessica blinked. "Oh, I thought you were napping." "I wasn't." "Well, we had to start without you." Rick had a call. I opened the fridge. The leftovers were already packed in containers. The chicken was gone. The rice, too. Rick stood. I was playing the long game now. That afternoon, I went down to Mr. Kessler's office to finalize the paperwork for something I'd been planning quietly for years. Setting up a living trust. My name. My terms. No surprises. I didn't want Jessica or Rick trying to claim anything when things fell apart, which I knew they eventually would. He slid the final draft across the desk. "This essentially ensures that all the assets you want protected stay under your control. If anything happens to you, they go exactly where you specify. No one can override it." "And the house?" I asked. "It'll be part of the trust, with you as the trustee. Nobody can sell it, refinance it, or even legally occupy it without your authorization. Especially not if the mortgage falls into delinquency." I nodded. "Good." He paused, then added, "They're going to find out eventually, you know." "I know." When I got back home, the TV was blaring in the living room. Rick was sprawled on the couch, feet up, shoes still on. Jessica was pacing the hallway with the baby on her hip, trying to get him to nap. The house smelled like microwaved pasta and too much fabric softener. No one asked where I'd been. No one cared. Later that night, Jessica knocked on my bedroom door. I had already changed into my robe and was getting ready to read in bed. "Hey, I just wanted to check if you gave any more thought to those documents from Darren," she said, voice a little too sweet. "I have," I answered. She smiled, relieved. "And? I'm not signing anything." Her smile froze. "Why not?" "Because I don't need help making decisions." She crossed her arms, leaned against the doorframe. "This isn't about control, Mom. It's just about making sure things are streamlined. You've been forgetful lately. It's just smart. To be prepared." "Prepared for what?" She hesitated. "In case something happens to you." "God forbid." I looked her straight in the eye. Jessica, the house is mine. You live here because I let you. That's not a threat. That's just a fact. I've paid for this house every month without your help. You don't get to come in here and talk to me like I'm some guest you're managing. Her face flushed. You said we were a family. You said you wanted to help. I did help. I still am. But I don't want to be used anymore. She didn't respond. She just turned around and walked down the hall. The next day, Rick decided to try his hand at persuasion. He cornered me in the kitchen while Jessica was out with the kids. So what's the real story, Carol? He asked, arms crossed, blocking the fridge. Are you trying to make some kind of statement? I didn't answer right away. I kept stirring my tea. You know, it's not a good look, the way you're handling this. Jess is stressed. I'm trying to keep everything together. You're making things harder than they need to be. I placed the spoon on the counter and looked at him. You're talking like this is your house, Rick. Well, we've lived here for years. We've built a life here. You've occupied it, I corrected. You've built nothing. He scoffed. Okay, so what? You want us to leave? Is that it? I didn't say that. Because that's what it sounds like. I took a slow breath. I just want the respect I've earned. Not manipulation, not backroom lawyer visits, and definitely not being spoken to like I've lost my mind. He rolled his eyes and walked off. Unbelievable. That night, the second envelope arrived. Another notification from the bank, this time marked delinquent action required. I didn't show them. I didn't even bring it inside right away. I left it in the garage in the box with old holiday decorations. I wasn't hiding it from them. I was letting time run its course. A few mornings later, Jessica found me on the porch drinking my coffee. We need to talk, she said. Okay. I checked the bank. The mortgage payment didn't go through this month. I didn't react. I just waited. She continued. Why didn't it go through? Did the autopay glitch? No. I canceled it. You what? I canceled it. She blinked hard, as if the words didn't make sense. Why would you do that? Because I'm done paying for a house I don't feel welcome in. The silence after that was thick. She looked stunned, truly stunned, like the idea of consequences had never crossed her mind. This affects all of us, Mom. The kids, Rick, me. It affected me too. For 6 years. You just didn't care. I thought I was doing what any mother would. What any grandmother would. I didn't think I was signing up to be treated like a placeholder in my own home. That morning, while they slept, I scanned every document in that folder and saved it to a new USB drive I'd labeled Home Legal. I placed a second copy on a cloud account Mr. Kessler had helped me set up, and wrote down the password on a small note I taped inside my planner. Not because I expected something dramatic to happen, but because I was done being careless. When I walked into the kitchen, Rick was already halfway through a protein shake. He didn't say good morning. He never really did. He just grunted and nodded at the fridge like I was supposed to check something there. Jessica came in 10 minutes later, bleary-eyed, hair in a messy bun, holding her phone like it was glued to her palm. Did you think any more about the papers? She asked casually. No, hi. No, how did you sleep? Just straight to business. I'm still thinking, I said. Rick raised an eyebrow. It's not like you're signing away your life, you know. It's just legal housekeeping. I understand, I replied, sipping my coffee. He smirked at Jessica, and I noticed the look they exchanged, like they were managing a situation, not talking to a person. And I felt it again, that quiet fury settling behind my ribs. That evening, I called Mr. Kessler from the backyard. I sat on the old patio chair with a notepad and pen. I'd like to go over the mortgage details again, I said. Same property? He asked. Yes, the one on Kenwood. He confirmed the loan was still in my name, and so was the title. No, other party was listed. No transfer, no cosigner. Are you thinking of selling? He asked. Maybe, just exploring options for now. He didn't press, but I could hear the curiosity in his voice. I wasn't ready to explain everything. Not yet, I just needed to confirm what I already suspected. This house was mine. Legally. Entirely. Later that week, Jessica had a friend over, some mom from her work who brought a tray of cookies and asked to see the nursery. They gave her the house. Tour like it was theirs. Jessica said things like, "We redid the guest bathroom last spring, and Rick's thinking of converting the garage into a home office." They walked right past me in the living room, didn't even pause to introduce me. I wasn't invisible. I was ignored on purpose. The next morning, I made another call, this time to the mortgage servicer. I confirmed what I needed and then asked, "One final question. If I stop paying, how long before the account goes into default?" The woman on the other end hesitated, then answered, "Typically 90 days, ma'am." "And the foreclosure process?" "That depends on the state. But it can begin shortly after delinquency, usually within 120 to 150 days. I thanked her and hung up. Rick had just come back from a coffee run. He set a cup down on the kitchen counter without looking at me. "Forgot what you liked, so I got black." "You can add stuff." I stared at the cup. He didn't wait for a response. He left the room like he had done something generous. That night, I checked the savings account I had opened 2 years ago, the one neither of them knew about. It was small but stable, enough to make changes if I needed to, enough to start over. I didn't tell them I had stopped the autopay on the mortgage. I didn't announce it. I didn't slam doors or leave notes. I just canceled the payment. They'd find out soon enough, and when they did, they'd have to face a truth they had ignored for years. This was never their house. It was mine. It had been 11 days since I canceled the mortgage payment. The first week passed quietly. No alerts, no notices, no mail. Jessica didn't notice. Rick certainly didn't. They kept acting like nothing had changed, because for them, nothing had. The water still ran. The lights still worked. The fridge was full. They assumed, like always, that someone, me, was keeping things running in the background, and I was. Just not for much longer. By the 12th day, I started checking the mail a little more carefully. On day 13, I got the first envelope from the loan company. White, generic, just a simple line in black print near the top. Important account notification. I didn't open it right away. I placed it inside my folder labeled Mortgage 2024 and left it under a stack of recipe books in my closet. She ended the call a few minutes later and never noticed me standing there. I walked back to my room, shut the door, and sat down on the edge of the bed. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the closet door for a long time, feeling something inside me go very still. Later that night, over dinner, she brought it up again. "Mom, have you thought any more about the papers? Darren said he can have everything ready by Friday if you want to sign. That way, we can take care of the bank stuff, the taxes, and even medical stuff if anything ever happens." Rick didn't say a word. He just kept eating. "I'll let you know," I said, my voice steady. Jessica looked annoyed. She didn't bother hiding it. "It's not like we're trying to take anything away from you. We're just trying to make things easier." "Whose things?" I asked. "What? Whose things are we trying to make easier?" She didn't answer. After dinner, I washed the dishes. She used to help. She doesn't anymore. I called my lawyer the next morning. Not Darren, my lawyer, Mr. Kessler. I asked him to pull up the deed, the mortgage records, and double-check that everything was still secure and in my name. It was. No liens, no shared ownership, no signed transfer. I had never added Jessica or Rick to anything. That afternoon, I sat in the backyard with a glass of iced tea and listened to the sound of the neighbors' wind chimes. I watched Rick pull into the driveway, step out of my car, the one I had co-signed for, and walk into my house like he owned it. I watched him drop his shoes at the door, toss his keys on the counter, and walk past me without even saying hello. I decided right then, I wasn't going to sign a thing, and soon, I wouldn't be paying their mortgage either. but I wasn't going to announce anything. Not yet. Let them keep thinking I was fragile, confused, slipping. Let them think they had time. They didn't know I'd already made the first call. They had no idea what was coming. I didn't sleep much after that. Night. I stared at the ceiling for hours, listening to the quiet hum of the baby monitor in the next room and the muffled sound of Rick snoring down the hall. I used to feel comfort in that stillness, knowing the house was calm, that everyone was safe. But now, every second felt like a reminder. I had built this peace, and they had convinced themselves they owned it. The next morning, I woke up early, long before the rest of the house. I tiptoed into the kitchen, poured myself a cup of coffee, and sat at the dining table with the folder I had pulled from the filing cabinet in my bedroom. Inside were records of every payment I had made on the house, 6 years of monthly mortgage statements, copies of wire transfers, bank statements, insurance renewals, property tax receipts, all with my name, not Jessica's, not Rick's, mine. They never once contributed. Not a dime. And it wasn't because they couldn't. Jessica went back to work within a year, and Rick had at least 2 clients he bragged about constantly. Just closed a security audit with a local firm, he'd say, leaning back on the couch, drink in hand. It's consulting. No overhead, pure margin. But I never saw a dollar. They always had reasons. Daycare costs, medical bills. Rick's business was reinvesting. Jessica's hours were inconsistent, and every time I brought it up, even gently, the conversation shifted. Mom, you said this was our family's home. Or, I don't think it's healthy to nickel and dime each other, so I stopped asking. I kept paying. When the roof leaked, I paid. When the water heater went out, I paid. When the property taxes jumped unexpectedly, I paid. And they acted like it was owed to them. I remembered one Christmas when I bought gifts for the kids, wrapped everything myself, even paid to cater a nice dinner so Jessica wouldn't have to cook. I slipped an envelope with $200 into Rick's stocking because he mentioned they were tight that month. He never thanked me. He just said, "That'll help with the tires." It was always like that. My help was assumed, my money invisible, my labor expected. But I remember each time. I remember writing the check when Jessica's car got repossessed. I remember signing for the medical bills when Rick hurt his back at the gym and they didn't have insurance. I remember putting the down payment on this house so my grandchildren wouldn't end up in some dingy apartment near the highway.